Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gayatri. I'm the Customer Success Specialist from BIM Technologies. Today, we are here to understand how MicroStation can help you build your career in your future life. Let me introduce about my organization. BIM Technologies, we are based out of Melbourne, is a technology-driven organization that specializes in offering solutions in the Bentley cutting-edge technology for a global clientele. Incorporated in 2017, we at BIM Technologies offer software, training, and consulting services. BIM Technologies, as a Bentley channel partner to begin with, is promoting MicroStation, Open Road, Synchro 4D, Open Rail Design, and Plaxis. We at BIM Technologies are as one of the prominent building information modeling service provider specialized in providing end-to-end BIM solutions for the construction and building assignments. Our experts have extensive experience in local as well as international market on variety of structural projects such as residential buildings, commercial sector, educational buildings, industrial sector, as well as infrastructure. We have provided our services like training and services to various engineering organizations across Australia and other parts of the globe. As we are a Bentley channel partner for both software as well as the training, so we do provide trainings on MicroStation, Plaxis, STAT Pro, Synchro, Open Rail, Open Roads, and Open Plant Modeler. Today, after the workshop webinar is done, so everyone will be getting a participation certificate, which comes directly from Bentley, which is a globally recognized certificate. Now, though I am not a technical expert, I would like to give a small brief about the webinar on which software we are going to have. It's an BIM Technologies would like to bring an opportunity for future engineers to learn how to enhance infrastructure projects using Bentley MicroStation. MicroStation is the only computer-aided design software for infrastructure design, helping architects and engineers like you bring their vision to life, present their designs to their clients, and deliver their projects to the community. MicroStation is more sophisticated than a tool. It is accessible software that offers power, control, efficiency, and security. MicroStation is built to scale from the smallest to the largest of infrastructure projects. It is a foundation that supports the entire Bentley modeling ecosystem. With MicroStation, you can minimize risks, accelerate automation, and win more work, that is design, communicate, and deliver. Today, our subject matter expert will show how this will help you all. Dhruv Mahajan is Master's in Civil Engineering and a Senior Engineer in Highway Designing. He is having an overall experience of 7 years in AEC industry, specializing in linear civil infrastructure projects, including road and railway systems. With a solid academic foundation, experience includes facilitating clients' transitions to BIM-ready design environments through training and project implementation. He is proficient in collaborating with diverse stakeholders and skilled in civil design workflows, utilizing advanced tools such as Bentley Open Road Designer and MicroStation to deliver accurate and efficient engineering solutions that meet project goals and industry standards. And also, he is a certified trainer for Bentley. So further, I would like to invite Dhruv Mahajan to showcase the complete MicroStation, how it would really help you all. Over to you, Dhruv.
Thank you, Gayatri. Can you please confirm if I'm audible clearly to you? And then I can start sharing my screen as well.
Sure. Yeah, you're audible. You can take it over. And also, after half an hour of the session, we have a 30 seconds of a poll. So once you're in the half of the session, Dhruv, if you can just give a small 30 seconds pause, we can run the poll also.
Sure, that works. Can you also confirm if my screen is visible to you?
No, let me stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, now it is visible. You can take it over.
Can you please confirm when you're able to see my screen? I can then go over from there.
Sure, you're visible. You can start.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to start with introduction to MicroStation. Now, this is a tool which you may have come across during your work, or maybe you have not come across MicroStation. You have been primarily an AutoCAD user. Despite your previous experience with the product, we will be focusing on the basic introduction, and then we will leap forward to something that generally we don't see people talking about on webinars on different platforms. That is more about the introduction to 3D modeling, where we come across solids, surfaces, and mesh, and how does we are able to use the power of MicroStation in creating different solids. So going ahead, uh, so in this particular part, we will start with introduction first of all, understanding what are the display options, what are the different tools that we have, and then understanding drawing tools, and then our modeling tools and visualization tools one by one. So let's start with the very first thing that comes to our mind, that when we come across the product, we have to understand how do we set up a project, what are the standards that we have to come across, and how does these standards help us to set up the workspace and work set in overall defining the project. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to set up a design file. That's where we try to understand what's a DGN is, and then finally going with the branded work set and how does those things go on, right? But before we push into the workspace and work set, like in the project, so let's try to understand what is the workspace and work set. So we can define workspace as a bigger container, and this particular container we can go on and we can specify certain standards to it. I can define that, okay, this particular workspace is going to be for a specific client. It can be for a specific standard, whether metric or imperial. It can be for a specific asset class that we are going to work on, whether it's going to be civil infrastructure, road or rail. It can be buildings, it can be plant. So workspace in itself is the entire block in which we define things, and within that we have a workset. Now within these worksets can be individual projects. Now this can be, for example, I have a project for Vic Roads, that can be my workspace, and then I have different projects within that. I may have a project A sitting as a different project, then so I can tag all these things. So now the question is, if I just skip the part over here and I should just head to the MicroStation interface, this is where I come across this this basic interface that welcomes us. Now in this particular part, you will see we have certain things in terms of configuration. We have recent worksets, we have the basic idea of MicroStation, we have workspace and workset. On the right side, what we come across is the properties of the selected workset. Now, if I just go on, I can either bring in a workspace which has been created by somebody else. Now, this is something very portable, as in that if you have somebody who is the setting up your project-wise standards, somebody who is setting up the open roads or open building standards. So one good thing, that particular SME, the subject matter expert, sets it up and gives it right to you, and then you're just able to integrate itself, right? And then you have your workspace, you can bring it in or you can create your own. So I'm going to create one over here to give us an example. So I'm going to call this particular workspace as, let's say we are going to say that it's going to be MSTN training or webinar. So MSTN is the short for MicroStation. I'm going to call this over here MSTN webinar. Then these are the root folders where I want these data to be stored in terms of where it stores the worksets, what standards it should have. And that's where I will go on and optimize or customize the standards that I need for myself for the project. So I can just go on, select it. Now, if you see, that's where we come across that I cannot go on, create a file. I cannot explore an existing file and open it because I need to have a work set. So for defining the project in itself, I need both the things, workspace and workset. We'll just go on and I'm going to call this uh, example workset, or we can say sample workset, right? So we can just give this a name. And now again, you have to specify, and if you want to specify custom property for your project location, you have your project code, you have your start date, end date, any other necessary information, you can always go on and give it there. I'm just going to say okay and start by creating a new file. Right. So we have got a good introduction about the product. So if I just head back to the presentation from here, so we have few things. We can create workspace and workset to define with starting in our project. The next basic thing before we actually come across the interface where we go in, we start using the tools of MicroStation. This is where what we need to understand. So we need to define a seed file. Now this is something very similar to selecting a template for defining anything. Now, if I go on into this presentation and I want to select a particular template for some sort of presentation, I can do that. Similarly, go on and select something on your AutoCAD if you have been using that. So you go on and you specify that I'm going to select a 2D template or a 3D template. And then you also define that, okay, whether that's template is going to be your metric standards or imperial standards. So this is where we call it seed file. The file which is existing in the background, and it is helping us to set up a file from there. Generally, we have something which is blank. I can go on and I can specify what type of file I want. I can just go on, select new, and from here I can select the seed. This is where I want to select whether I want to continue with the 2D design or whether with a 3D metric design. Now, these are other different options I can choose from, right? So if now the question generally at this point a lot of people has that, okay, there are certain predefined seeds, but I do want something customized for my project, right? So that's again another thing. I can just take any one of these files which matters or which is most relevant to my project. I can take it from there. I can go into it and I can select whatever elements I want to change. I can go on, say, create new levels. I can go on, create new layered information. I want to add new different types of line styles and other different things, right? So if there is something you want to optimize or customize for your project, and that particular seed has to go multiple times, the rather than making the changes later on in multiple files, it's best to do that in the seed file and continue it from there. So for this example, I'm going to take 3D metric design, and we will try to explore the product as well. So we'll just call this, let's say I'm going to call this 3D design and go on and click save. So that was a basic introduction. We got a good idea about how it looks. The next thing is defining and coming across the interface. With any product that you will come across in infrastructure space or anything in Matter, the easiest way to get used to that particular product is to understand the interface, try to understand what is located where, and what are the tools that will be helpful to you, right? So if we go on back to the product, so here you can get an idea that what do we have? So we have certain things here on the top. So that's where we have a workflow. I can see that this particular interface, now a lot of people may have already used VATI versions, the previous versions of MicroStation. Those look pretty different. But this one, if you see, it looks pretty similar to MS Word, right? For example, if you just pop on, get back to the presentation over here, you see that it's pretty similar, right? So the interface that we have over here in the MicroStation now is ribbon based, and this helps us to define what we are looking for. It's easy to search for your tool. If you want to have a particular tool to search for, you can go over there. You have different workflows, and the moment you select these workflows, your tools that you come across, these tool groups that you have, these keep on changing as per your requirement. Now presently I'm in drawing, so it's going to give me tools more specific to the more specific to the drawing workflow. Similarly, if I go on and I want it back to the modeling, that's where I want to see solids. I want to extrude some shapes. I want to do some, some particular operations on surfaces. I can do that. Finally, once I'm done with it, I want to get a good visualization. I want to export my work into some sort of rendering. For example, I have Luminati link over here. So I can just go on, select it, get done with it. Looks good, right? Now, again, getting your exports from your finalized models into your Luminati is, again, it's a different thing altogether. But yes, so we'll just go back to the presentation. Now, what do we have? We have workflows. We have different workflows. We started with drawing, modeling, and visualization. The next thing we definitely need to come across is the backstage. Now, this is where we try to control few things. So if we just go back, and I can just head back to MicroStation, select file, and again, you see this is quite similar to what we have now with the any Microsoft tools. I can go on, select settings. I want to define design file settings. That's where I can specify angle readout and then different things. I want to make a change in working units. What should be my accuracy? I want that to be, let's say, 5 decimal place. Small thing, right? But yes, so the access of tools that you have, it's easy to define. You want to define your line style settings and other elements. You can always come here and do that. Apart from it, you want to select certain options that if you want to import certain types of file, whether you want to understand the compatibility of the another software that you have, is something you can go on, select import, and you will come across different options. One good thing, you can import your shape file, start working on it. You have different options to choose from, right? And you have your exchange file types, you have 3D model types, and similarly, you have the options of exporting it different file types and use it from there. Going back to the interface, that's what we have. Okay, next thing that we will be coming across in MicroStation is in terms of design file settings. We have gone through that. We have preferences. This is where we each have few elements to control. We have the option of Explorer, and finally reviewing the properties dialog box. We'll quickly go back to that. But before we head back to the product, to the software, we'll try to understand what do we have. We have models in MicroStation. Now, in one particular file, in one particular DGen file, I can access it. I can go on and start to work on it. So I can, at the same time, add different models. Each model will be a blank file in itself. And I have the power to select whether what type of element or what type of model I want to see or work on. So either it can be, now this is somewhere it is acting very similar to what we have as a seed file, or we can select the information that way. Now the model that I can select, it can either be a design model, a drawing model, or a sheet model, right? So these are different types of models that we have in our MicroStation. And what we have next is that we can go on and define what type of model do I need, whether I need a 2D model or a 3D model, right? So if I just go back to the product over here, and you see we have models. Right now, we have something which is a default model, which is not containing any information as of now. But at the same time, I can go on and I can select a new model. And this is where I can select new additional things, whether the next element, the next type of file, next model that was supposed to be in this file, this DGN file, can be either design, it can be drawing, it can be sheet. So if you go on and if I select design, it can either be 2D or 3D, right? It's supposed to be like that. Similarly, but if I go on to select a drawing seed, now this is where which helps us to produce a sheet or the final output. That's where we will have a 2D option only, right? Then we have another thing that's sheet. We are trying to produce a sheet over here. We want to select certain type of annotation scale. We will select what type of annotation setup we want, or we want to select any sheet setup, right? So that's where we will select it, right? So those are the things we want to define. Sheet index, that's another part of the work set in itself, that if I have a sheet index within one particular work set, I can continue to add all different categories of sheet. Start with defining whether it's going to be a plan sheet, a cross-section sheet, or whether it's going to be a a profile sheet. So there are different things that I can choose from. In that sheet index, I can start to give in some data and provide it from there, right? So here I can select it. So if you see, the moment I select this on, it does not give me the name of this file itself, but the project or the work set name, right? So what does that mean? If I have, let's say, n number of files within this work set, I have the ability to select multiple sheets or create multiple sheets within the workset, and I can just click on it to jump from one file to another file, or from one sheet to another sheet, without actually going back and selecting the file or searching it in what particular file is my cross-section sheet available, in which file is my plan and profile available. So that's where we can always go on and select that. So you can select, and apart from this, in terms of sheet index, we can always go on and add multiple categories or work on it. So here you can see, once I've added it, I can just go on produce sheet later. So it does come with a basic setting right now. I can go on optimize that. That's something we can always look in terms of drawing production. Okay. Now, if you see what happened, that by the time I came here in the sheet model, you can identify the workflows that I have right now are quite different. Now, this is where I don't have modeling. I don't have the visualization option, right? So the models does actually control a lot of elements or a lot of tools that can actually work on those. So if I go on select drawing, I can have all the tools which are in the drawing, but I cannot use anything from the main design model. So if I just hop back to the design model, I can go back to drawing, select general modeling or so on, and go forward with it. Going ahead, we have certain tools to choose from. We have home, we have primary. So we are going to select certain tools. These are tools which are going to be handy across different types of project, whether you're going to work in building design or whether you're going to work in civil design. So you will go on to select Explorer. That's where we will just tag it over here. And this will give us a lot of information, that what types of information that we have to. Now, one good thing that I will bring your attention on is going to be this part, that is the items. Now, this is where we go on and we start by creating different libraries for the project attribution. So for a project, I can define, okay, that I'm going to create a specific item type. And within that item type, I can go on and define certain things, whether it's going to be project information or the annotation, for what type of annotation that should go on the line over there, what particular type of information should be stored, whether it's going to be drainage information, it can be the door information, it can be any particular part that I want to consider can be brought in over here. Then we have the sheet index, as we discussed about it few minutes back. I can go on. Right now it says just a single sheet, it's an untitled sheet. If I go on and make an edit over here, that will do the work for me. Apart from it, we also have the option to go on and select multiple categories, add multiple categories to choose from. I can just go on, edit it, and then start giving in different folder, whether it's going to be cross-section sheets. So, and the next time if I go on and I create a sheet, that's going to be an option, that whether I want this to be stored as a cross-section sheet or not. So it's a pretty nifty thing. It's a pretty small thing to begin with, but once you start to use the power of it, it definitely becomes handy in the long run. Um, Going back to the presentation, what's next to cover? So we are going to start with the 3D modeling in MicroStation. That's where we are going to primarily have few tools to look at. Gayatri, before we go ahead, do you want to conduct the polls at this moment? And then we can go ahead.
Yes, if you can just give me 30 seconds, we can have a poll. Just
Please
a
go
second.
ahead.
Yeah. So we have 30 seconds for this poll. Request you all to do a polling for this. Just want to understand how familiar you are with the software. Right through. I think we can end the poll now. You can continue with your session.
Thank you, Gayatri. So should I just click on it? Okay, done.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's go back. So we are going to start with the interesting part now in terms of 3D modeling. Now that's where let's have a look about what tools do we have. I have also created few examples for you to look at. And I'm going to begin with the back to the interface. So for this, I have created another file. I'm going to close this, select file, go to backstage, and I'm going to choose another workspace. So I have Bentley Connect Training, MS Basic. So that's where we have right now for the workspace and the workset. For this one, I have one particular example. I will start with this. Okay. So once this file is opened, I will come across a certain shape right now. I'm going to close this Explorer. I don't need it at this moment. I need to begin with models at this first. I'm going back to 3D metric design. That's where we'll start to have a look about what are the different view things I have set up. So to begin with, I have set up we have 8 viewports in MicroStation. You can see these are here on the bottom. And I have turned on 4 to work on. So I have isometric 3D metric design. So you see what do we have? We have view 1 and view 4. So these are the 4 different views. This first one defines isometric, top, front, and right. So all are being defined over here. Apart from this, we can start with going to the drawing tab right now, drawing workflow. Under this, I'm going to select with one basic thing. Let's say I'm going to start with a shape. And okay, I'm going to be working in the top view over here. So once I've started to place a particular shape, I do need to define few things. Let's try to understand. Now, one thing when I started to work on creating a table, let's say for this particular example, I'm considering to create a table, a 3D table. And the important part that I'm going to work on is something called as variables and variations. Now, this is a very interesting concept where I just define few variables, and these variables allow me to control the different shapes that I create. So if I am going to create a variation of table that is 2 by 2 or another table that is 6 by 6, so or it can be 8 by 9. So whatever the shape of whatever the specifications of length and width I define, it should follow that, and it should follow certain rules to begin with, right? So first of all, what rules should I consider while creating a table, right? So first of all, it should have a length, right? The second thing I should need is a width, right? And apart from this, I should be able to define the table thickness, what should be the thickness of the tabletop. Then I may also need to have 4 different legs of this table. So I can just say that, okay, one table leg should be here, another table leg should be here, another one is on this edge, and then this one is over here. Now, in order to see this, I've just quickly drawn this right now, but if you want to actually start drawing it, the it's going to be more detailed. But the point is, the moment you will start to define that, okay, I need to change this particular shape into from, let's say, 4 by 3 into 7 by 8 or some other settings, how will these legs or the overall specifications of the table will follow, right? That's where we use this concept of constraints, right? So we have certain constraints to choose from. And at the same time, we have something called as variables, right? So this is where we come across, we start to define few things. We say that, okay, this is what I want in my work right now, and we'll continue from there. So in this particular example, let's start with one basic thing. Let's say I want this should be my table. I'm going to change this to view preferences, and I'm going to change black. Okay, so I'm going to change my display right now to wireframe, and I'm going to work ahead on this. At the same time, for the specification that I have over here in view number 1, again, I'm going back to select this to be wireframe, and let's go ahead. So what do we have? To begin with, we have local variables, we have variations. Now, what are these things? So this is where I try to define what elements should vary or what should not. So I'm going to quickly create one example for you. I'm going to call this, let's say, a table length, right? Uh, Easy as that. Now, again, I have certain things to define over here. Now, there can be different types. I can go on and select it. So it can define whether what type of information that you're feeding over here. It's a distance, it's an angle, it's an integer, whether that's going to be a true or false expression. So there are different areas or different functions that you can define over here. I'm going to say that this is going to be distance. And then apart from this, I also want to specify what should be the minimum value. So let's say 2 should be the minimum value. I can just go on, go on to the expression builder over here, click on this, and it says what should be the minimum. I say 2, and that's by the time I clicked on it, you see it takes information based on the unit settings I have done for this seed file or the file itself. So once I've selected it, I can go on select OK. And then similarly, I'm going to say for the max value, it should not be more than 10. I'll just go on and select OK. Now this is a very primary example. Now this is something that you can keep on changing as per your requirements, as per your project needs. Now the next thing that I can come across is table width. So I'm just going to create it quickly. Table width. Apart from it, what's next to create is going to be my, let's say, what should be the table thickness. I can say whether it's going to be, and similarly, I'm going to call something that it's going to be table leg size, right? So what should be the, the size of that leg? And then let's add another one that's going to be table height, right? So we have added few parameters over here. These variables are certainly the parameters of this table we are going to create. Then apart from it, we can also create certain variations. Now, this is where the power of variables comes into picture, right? So I'm going to start with one thing. So let's go on and define a table length. So it says value. So I'm going to say that I'm going to have a 4-meter wide, 4-meter length. And then for the width, I want it to change from 1 meter to 3 meter. A simple example on that one. Then we have table thickness. That's where I want a very slight thickness of 0.25. I've given that, and it takes meters depending upon the units I've specified. Going on with the table leg. Now this is where again I can say that this should be, this is the table leg thickness, or width of it. So for this, I'm going to call this 0.5. This is just an example, or I can just say 300 should be good. So let's say 0.3. And for table height, I'm going to call this, let's say 3 meters. And again, for this expression, I can set up a minimum expression and a maximum expression. So I say that it should have a minimum height of 1. I can just go back, and if I can skip the max as well, that's up to me. Now that's where we have just defined the variables. We have not done anything more than that. So how does the particular information that we have just added comes on to this particular tool, right? On this particular table over here. So I'm just going to run few things. So you see we have something called as element. I can start by selecting the element and I can start defining the width of it. So if you see, the moment I click on this, and this is where I'm not defining the dimensions of it, in terms of giving it a sheet production or giving the annotation. It's where I'm defining what width it should take. So what length it should take. So I'm going to say table length, and you see it gave me a different option over here, whether it's going to be new variable, new expression, and then the list that we have just created. I can go on and select table length, and it did that. The next thing I can come on is select the width. So we can just go on, select it. So I can start by specifying table width over there and do a left click. So that's where we have got it now. And let me get the element selection. Now that's what we have. That's where we are going to work on. I'm just going to remove these ones for now and add it later. So we are going to define further based on this element over here. So what do we have? We have this being defined that this particular rectangle has certain values. Similarly, for this particular part, I can start defining the constraints on it. It can be elements similar to what we have done. Select it. So it should be table leg and go on. Start with the another side, define table leg, and it does that. Now, another thing that I need to come across is that what should be the width, what should be the distance of this table leg from the edge of this table, right? So I can go on and select distance as an option. I also have certain other options. It can be angle. How do I place it and start working on it? So I can just go on, select it, zoom in, select that one. And what's the present value? That's 0.7. So I'm going to change it to 0.01. And the moment I take care of it, oh, I think I did give it a 1. So that's all right. I can change that later. And select this one as 0.1. Right? So we have given this a particular direction. I can turn off these markers. That gives me an idea. And here you are. So we have got this an idea in terms of how we have different dimensional settings. Apart from it, we also have these options where we have 3D constraints, we have 2D constraints, and we can work ahead with it. Next thing to select from here is going to be our different workflow, that's modeling. Under this, we have different options to choose from, whether it can be extrude option, it can be your options to cut a particular shape, you want to cut a particular direction, you want to create a hole, you want to create a shell. There are different options we can choose from. Now, going on to the next stage, that's where I have done a bit of a fair of homework for you. And that's where we are going to continue ahead. So what do we have? We have got the exact shape ready for us. And that's where we can see these tools in action. So we can go to select solids. We have options of creating solids. We have options to create these features, right? So I'm going to select extrude. We have the options over here. Now that's where I can define what type of thickness do I want. Now this can either be a value that I want to put in, or it can also be based on the particular variables that I've got for myself. So I can say that it's going to be table thickness 0.25, select OK for that. And here in the isometric view, I'm going to select it and add it over there. So for this to be viewed in a way, I can select display style, and I'm going to select it to be illustration. so that it looks better in that way. You can see that particular solid has been created. Similarly, for another element to work on, it can be that I can extrude the legs of this particular table. So it can be, let's select with one of these. We can go on, select table leg height or table height in that. So here you see it's just 1 meter right now. For this, I can select, and here I can define whether it's going to be up or down. That's where you have the control. You can define what element you want. And once you have defined it, you can go back to your variables or start defining it. What's your need as per that? So if you see right now, you have the variations in this particular example. To get a better understanding, let's hop on to the another model and let's see what do we have. So that's where we are presently. And in this stage, if I go on to select constraints, select variables, I should come across 3 different variations that I've created. So we can just go on and try to explore this thing right now. So if I go on, select it, and from here you can see we have the variations. So we can select table 1, apply to model, and you see it does behave in certain ways and it misses out certain information right now. So you see when I changed it to table 1, so I have missed out, or I have deliberately left these two uh, parts of the leg table, table legs, where I'm not given the distance dimensional constraint, right? So this is one of the examples that you need to define certain dimensions altogether to get what you need, right? So the next thing, if you see, go on and I select table 3 on this one, and I can just select apply to model, you see that it has certain issues with it as well. So to overcome these, let's have a look at another model we have. That's where we have 3D table add legs. And I'm going to select it over here. So you see that's what we have as the final output. We have our isometric view. We have our bottom view. I can change it back to top view, but to see how does it perform in terms of looking at the these legs from the bottom, we can have a good idea. Then we have front of the table, we have the back right of the table, and we will also see if I have to create a new variation, how does that work. So here I can select table 1, I can select apply to model, and right now it's maybe in the same model. So you see when I've changed it to a table 2 that is having table length of 5 meter by 5 meter, you see it comes in a good way, right? Similarly, if I go on select table 3 that is primarily different, it should take that. Now let's see what happens if I have to create another variation. I can go on, select new, and say it's going to be table 4. And for this, I can define it's going to be a table length of, let's say, 7 meters, table width of, let's say, 4 meters. Let's make it a different way. And for table leg size, zero point 0.3 is good. Table height, I'm going to change it to 3.5. And the moment I have given these information, and you can see that there are certain ones which are grayed out. Now, this is where we have something called as expressions, and we cannot edit these at all, right? So I'm going to select table 4, apply to it, and you see it does take care of the entire thing for me. Now, this was primarily a very simple example in terms of creating a table, but in actual sense, the essence of this particular exercise was to give you an idea about what are the different variations or what are the different elements that you generally come across in your design work. For example, creating different types of doors, creating different types of more electrical pits or electrical components. Certainly, you have certain drainage components that you may come across. And also, once you have created these components, one best thing to do is you can also save them as a cell file, something very similar to what you do in terms of 2D cell, right? So you will have a very similar thing over here and you can use it that way. Going ahead, we also have created another few examples for you to look at. So these are going to be junction box. Now you see this is something very similar to what we may use in our drainage example, right? Or now the particular purpose that you will see over here is that the entire thing has been created in this way. Multiple variations can be added in this way. Similarly, apart from this, this was the example where we have used solids. Now this one is example where we can use surfaces in our modeling to use to create something which is very thin. For example, if you see in this particular model, we come across a steel section, a steel head wall, and this one is quite thin. It does not have any thickness assigned to it. So because it does not have any thickness, it is being modeled as a surface rather than as a solid, right? You can come across another example as well. Apart from this, we have another few case scenarios. We have added another end wall, which can be used straight away. We can create this in MicroStation, give it to somebody who is going to use this in open roads designer, open rail, or maybe in open buildings as well, right? So the particular use case that you may have for these elements is quite wide, and you can use it as a building designer or a civil designer as well, right? So that's another example. You can see how nicely or how neatly this particular end wall can be created, and it can be used in your road models to bring it more, add more detail to your data. That's all from my side. Over to you, Gayatri. If you have any doubts, we can go ahead and talk about it.